excited to announce the launch of the CCAC Sector Hubs, and we are especially excited because we feel we have a strong level of support and momentum driving us to implement our 2030 strategy. We have really feel with the ministerial support at COP26 launching the 2030 strategy that we have full-scale financial support also for all of us to work to implement measures to mitigate short-lived climate pollutants. We're going to be announcing a call for proposals of just over 9 million this year. And so this is going to really allow us to implement work in countries as well as in the sectors to advance our engagement strategies, which I'll be speaking about in a few minutes. The board is aiming to launch a call for proposals as well in 2023 and beyond at hopefully much even higher levels of financial support for implementers and for countries to scale up mitigation measures. In addition to the CCAC 2030 strategy at COP26, the Global Methane Pledge was announced, and this is a really a very strong political commitment by countries around the world to reduce methane globally. And so the CCAC hubs are really going to be a place where we help support and implement the Global Methane Pledge. And so for today, as we launch the hubs, we really want to go into the detail of how these hubs will operate and how you can engage in the hubs moving forward to help advance our objectives and our milestones for 2025 and then our objectives to 2030. So as many of you know, we have 6 sector-based strategies, which are, 6 sector-based hubs, which are going to be building on our past work in our initiatives. And each of these hubs has a specific engagement strategy that has been written and approved by the CCAC board. And this will be guiding our work going forward in each of the sectors. So for example, for agriculture, the main work streams and the main focus of our work is going to be on advancing sustainable management at large and small feedstock operations, eliminating agricultural burning, and reducing paddy rice flooding. And there's also going to be a focus in the agriculture initiative on fostering cross linkages to net zero climate mitigation strategies, and also to advancing the market readiness of products for enteric methane and promoting emissions intensity reductions. And so this is all set out in the engagement strategy, which you should have access to on our website, and also are free to email us if you're confused about where you might find this engagement strategy. For waste, we are going to build on the initiative that all the work we did from 2012 until now on organic waste management, on open burning, and also on this particular intersection of the vertical integration between the city and national government to help create an enabling environment to improve policy making for municipal solid waste to mitigate methane and black carbon from municipal solid waste. Fossil fuels is building on our past work in the oil and gas initiative. And this is really working together with partners to advocate for governments to prioritize methane and black carbon reductions from the fossil fuel sector with a specific emphasis on oil and gas. There's going to be support for governments seeking to regulate fossil methane and black carbon, and also support for eliminating flaring and promoting efficiency for unavoidable flares. Moving to the Household Energy Initiative, this Household Energy Hub, this again is building off the initiative work. And here is really a focus on helping countries supporting countries to implement targets that have been identified in the NDCs. There's already 67 countries that have identified household energy targets in their NDCs. And so this work in this hub is going to be helping to get to the next stage of implementation and also to strengthen the next round of NDCs. And then for the heavy duty vehicles and engine initiative, this initiative hub, excuse me, builds on the prior initiative, and this hub has multiple work streams where there's a focus on clean fuels and vehicles, also on non-road mobile machinery and stationary engines, and marine inland and water transport and green freight. So there's a wide range of activities underway in the heavy duty vehicles and engines hub that will be carried forth. And last but not least, for efficient cooling, this is continuing our work here to raise global awareness of the cooling sector's ability to combat climate change, to support countries and really encourage countries to ratify the Kigali Amendment, and to enhance the environmental benefits of the Kigali Amendment by reducing HFC and energy-related emissions in the cooling sector. And in the engagement strategy that you can read, you can see that by 2024, all CCAC cooling industry partners will hopefully have provided commitments on how they will support and facilitate a faster phase down of HFCs and enhance energy efficiency in the structure. So the work is building on the CCAC's work to actually advance the Kigali Amendment, and now the real phase of all of our work across all of the sectors is on implementation and strengthening policy and regulation in order to facilitate implementation and scale up across the board. So I want to share with you a little bit more about the hub structure and how the hubs will be organized. Each of our hubs will have a minimum of 2 countries co-leading the hub. So that means there can be more than 2, but there must be at least 2. And these co-leads will really provide the national perspective and the national voice and help drive, help guide and the leadership group, which will be supporting them to advance on the engagement strategy. So the leadership group will be comprised not only of the co-leads, but also additional state partners and non-state partners that will meet on a more regular basis to support and guide the hub's direction in setting priorities and helping to design political support for the initiative, for the hub to move forward. And last but not least, a very critical piece of the hub is actually the full hub membership. So here is where the CCAC partners and the external interested parties will convene 2 to 3 times a year for technical discussions to share best practices and to set priorities to implement the engagement strategies. We have designed what we hope is a very transparent and easy way to join these full hubs and then to participate in learning that we are designing for each of the meetings. So each full hub meeting will have an opportunity for countries to present their experience and the work they have underway in a specific area of the sector. And then there will be a scientific report or scientific analysis or scientific reflection on what the countries are doing to advance the mitigation. And in the second part of the full hub meeting, there will be a panel discussion likely to discuss a barrier to implementation, to really have like a deeper conversation about a barrier that many countries are facing to actually implement whatever solution has been identified. And then lastly, in the third part of the meeting, the full hub will discuss the priorities and projects moving forward. And this is also a place where we're going to be fostering networking and facilitating co-creation of projects to help advance and actually like get a really excellent set of proposals for the for our call for proposals. And in conversations I've had with some of the co-leads, the discussion has been on also creating like a pipeline of projects that could be funded even outside of the coalition. So our work has been really on thinking about the outcomes of each of these engagement strategies and what kind of work we need to get to do to get to these agreed outcomes. And I would also like to emphasize, as many of you will already know, we will have a national planning hub, which will be built on our prior SNAP initiative. And this planning hub is going to be integral to the sectoral hubs and vice versa. So the national planning hub will be a place where it will coordinate financing, implementation, and monitoring of action in coordination with the sectoral hubs. And in the national planning, there will be a lot of close work on potential implementation and facilitating, early on in the planning process with the hubs. There will also be like a very strong emphasis on fostering peer-to-peer engagement and engagement of best practices and bringing in the sectoral hubs into the planning at this early phase and with partners throughout the process. In addition, there will also be access to implementation pathways and engagement with facilitators through the sectoral hubs. And then the same is true in the sectoral hubs, which will in the sort of reverse order also provide implementation support for measures identified as key priorities in the planning hub. They will advise and support on issues that have been like these barriers to implementation identified in the national planning hub. The sectoral hubs will help advise governments on very specific ways to define and implement mitigation measures, and also to exchange experiences and lessons learned on the best practices. So it's really one of the things that we tried to do in launching designing these hubs is to really create a mechanism for sharing between the sectoral hubs and the national planning hubs so that they would not be operating separately, but that they would be operating together in the sense that when priorities are set in the national planning hub for specific sectors, the sectors can step in and help. And when in the sectoral hubs, planning needs and regulatory needs are identified, then the expertise of the planning hub can be brought to bear in the sectoral hubs. So this is really one of our major objectives with the hubs, is to facilitate this this structure of sharing between the hubs. And I'm really pleased and thankful to all of the countries who have already agreed to help co-lead our hubs. And you can see for the agriculture initiative, we have the United States and Costa Rica. For household energy, we have Ghana and the United States. For fossil fuels, we have Colombia and the United States. In waste, we have the United States and Chile. And for heavy-duty diesel vehicles and engines, Cambodia and the United States. And for efficient cooling, Canada and the Maldives. So we are extremely grateful to all of the countries for going through the process of identifying lead contact individuals for each country. And we have already been setting up very detailed co-chair calls so far with agriculture and with household energy, and we are reaching out to co-chairs now to set up the structure with the co-chairs and the secretariat supporting, and then we will be sending out invitations for leadership group calls, and then full hub meetings will begin in April, in the April-May timeframe. And like I mentioned previously, each of these full hub meetings will be a real opportunity to dive into a very particular aspect of a sector and share experiences, learn new information, and really think together about how we can strategize to advance in the particular area in the sector. And I mentioned also earlier our engagement strategies, which are guiding us in our work. This is where at the end of the year, we'll be reflecting on what we've done, and it will be matching with our engagement strategy to ask ourselves, how far have we come on our path towards achieving these milestones from 2025 and on our way to achieving the goals of 2030. And these are living documents. So as we learn things, these documents will change over time, and they'll go through a process of reapproval by the board. And so the engagement strategies are really the foundation of the work of the hubs. And I am here today to really encourage you to join one or more of these hubs. And I would like to explain the benefits of joining, which is that we are working to create a community of practice in each sector through the hub. We're going to be emphasizing peer-to-peer exchange and facilitating peer-to-peer exchange to as much extent as possible. We will be providing technical discussions on best practices, bringing in world leaders on different topic areas for people to learn from and ask questions and follow up with in the future. And also we'll be providing the latest science and analysis in each of these very defined areas to help advance solutions. We are going to use the hub to build on a common vision and to increase visibility of mitigation of climate pollutants. We want to raise political ambition, raise ambition overall, strengthen political will, and inform ministerial engagement. We also are really focused on matchmaking, and this is going to be between state and non-state actors, also matchmaking in co-creating projects, so among non-state actors and other implementers. Our whole focus of the hub is to create collaboration and to create and identify synergies between different members' activities and new project development, even beyond the CCAC. We are, as mentioned, going to have national level action, and that is going to be linking between the sectoral hubs and the national planning hub. And also, we're going to use these hubs as a workplace to really inform the CCAC funding priorities and the annual work plan and budget. And as I mentioned earlier, this year we're very fortunate to be getting ready to announce a call for proposals for $9 million. And that is a place where we really are looking for guidance from the hubs and all of the CCAC partners in setting the priorities and meeting this moment overall to achieve the mitigation reductions that we know we need by 2030. And so the way to join a hub is to email us at the secretariat at ccaccoalition.org, and we ask if you please provide all of this information so that we can quickly enter you into our database and add you to the appropriate mailing lists, and to ensure that you receive all the information necessary in a timely way. And also that will help keep the dialogue moving between meetings. We want to be sharing resources, inviting to meetings, really creating a workflow together in each of these hubs. So with that, I will pause for a moment and hopefully answer some of your questions that you may have about the hubs in general or the hub structure. And James or Seraphine, if you wouldn't mind helping me, for some reason I'm a little stuck in the little box and I'm not able to see.
So far, no hands up. So.
Okay.
One from Dimitri from IGES.
Thanks, Sandra, for very clear introduction. I have a couple of clarifications. So the one thing is, first one is, when it's looking at the 6 focus areas in the hub, we are mostly work with the waste hub. So from the waste initiative, now we go to the waste hub. I found some of waste hub activities are very much in link with agriculture and household energy. Let's say you mentioned like organic waste is one of the area. So when we looking at the biogas at the smaller level, household level, so biogas create in household energy, and biogas also give a liquid fertilizer for the agriculture, food production and the thing. So how this new system, so that kind of interrelations is happening. That is one thing, one issue I have. The second one is a practical issue on the national planning hub and the sector hubs, because we found that is one of the main issues in the former structure. Like when the waste initiative worked with the national planning, so there were not much interlinkage. So the new system, how you think that this new connection between national planning hub and the sector hubs can be implemented, especially at the national level, because when we're looking at the national level, mostly the waste, when we're looking at waste, is a different department in the country, and the climate is another department in the country ministry. So within country, how it can be practically interlinkage is something I think we need to be discussed. And the third, my last question is like the budget allocation. You said 9 million. So in the previous one, so as an initiative waste hub, we know that we develop waste initiative budget plan together, getting like a proposal from the implementing partners and submit as a one proposal to the secretariat to get the funding for the initiative work. So but the current system, how this happening? So the hub have such kind of a power to not the power, maybe the coordination that the getting proposals from the implementers or the countries and make as a hub proposal to the secretariat and get because that make, for me, my understanding, it's easy. So we know that how the budget is going on waste sector, and which implementer get the budget, who is implementing in which area, rather than individual proposals going on onto the secretariat. So I will stop here. I have another more questions, but I think others also have. So thank you.
So thank you so much for all 3 of your questions. They're all completely on point. So I really appreciate you asking them. The first on biogas and this interlinkage between the 3 sectors, waste, agriculture, and household energy. This is actually completely top of mind. We've been having conversations with GMI and with others about this, and especially in the household energy, with the household energy co-leads about how biogas. And I think the way we've designed things now is very very open and is designed to allow this kind of development of new ideas. So I would say the main cross sector that we have, the main crossover that we have right now is between the National Planning Hub and between the sectors. But we could discuss and I could envision us creating a separate working group on biogas, where we would pull together individuals from each of the three sector hubs and then really work with the leading like non-state actors who are working on biogas. This is something that is a completely obvious opportunity for us in mitigating short-lived climate pollutants and making the reductions and achieving the SDGs. It's across the board. It seems to me personally to be a place where we could really make some advancements, and I think others are thinking the same. And so we could really work, for those interested, we could think about how we could advance this. So I'll personally take this question back to the co-leads of each of the hubs, the waste, the agriculture, and the household energy, and can also follow up with you. And we can share this information more broadly to solicit more interest in this particular area. For your question about how we're actually going to do this, how we're actually going to make the national planning and the sectors work more closely together, I think we've actually come up with a really fantastic mechanism to do this. And this is through what we call the expression of interest. So we have circulated the expression of interest to all of our ODA eligible countries. And we've received responses from quite a few, and what we're doing right now is analyzing these according to sector and also according to the requests at the national planning level. And so we're going to be able to take these very country-specific requests back to the co-leads and the leadership group for them to also analyze and think about in the context of a call for proposals. And we're also right now kind of matching these EOIs with the NDCs as much as we can to see how those solutions are fitting together that have been requested through different mechanisms, to try to get at what you said of like trying to find the right people in each of our spheres, so that we can expand the dialogue and be working with the right people, for example, in the waste sector. I'm going to turn over to my colleague in a minute to give a little bit more detail on her perspective, my colleague Seraphine, who's leading the National Planning Hub. Just lastly, on your question about the budget for the 9 million, we're going to go into detail in this in a minute to talk about the funding structure and the new proposal structure. So I think I'll wait for my colleague James to explain that process, and then please don't hesitate to ask a question in the Q&A if we haven't properly answered your question. With that, maybe I'll turn over to you, Seraphine, to see if you have anything to add about this work that we're really focusing on to connect the dots between national planning and sectors.
Yes, thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you very much, Kumakura, for your question. And this is really like it's the heart of really this need for coordination between the sector and the planning hub. And and I agree, there was some kind of disconnect in the past. So the new structure is really trying to address this, and really like to include the sectoral expertise in all the same stages of the planning hub, really starting with the integrated emission inventories, and then with the integrated mitigation strategies, and now also like in the planning engagement strategy, we have a very strong focus on implementation, and this is really where we need the sectors to help and to support at the hub level, but also, as you mentioned, like really at the national level, like involving the relevant ministries. So We are still discussing the concrete modalities, and this will be also a key topic in the leadership discussions that will now start in March. But like some ways would be like to really include the sector experts in the planning hub and vice versa. And to, as Sandra mentioned, to work also collaboratively together to how to respond to those requests from countries that we now are gathering through our EOI process, where we receive a lot of interest from countries to really further work on the planning process. Or here there is really, I think there's a good opportunity to think jointly how best to respond to those requests and to have discussions at the hub level, connecting the sectoral hubs and the planning hub. And then I think it would be also very beneficial to have like on a regular basis meetings between all the co-leads from the sector hub and the planning hub to really look together at what those needs and priorities from countries are and how to respond to them in a complementary manner. So in summary, like, so I would really welcome also like your participation in the planning hub to really bring in also your expertise there and to then really help to bring the technical substance to the planning process and in all the stages. Thank you.
I can also see John Merlis has his hand up. John, would you like to come in?
Hello, can you hear me now? You can. Okay, good. Yes, so thanks very much for the presentation. My name's John Merlis, and I'm a trustee of something called Environmental Protection UK, which is a civil society body working on implementation of environmental policies at a local level. So we deal a lot with local authorities. And my question is about participating in the hubs. Are you expecting bodies who are working at a subnational level to join through their national focal point, or would you like to hear about them and their participation directly with the national or sector hub?
James, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Thanks for the question, John. So I think in the full hubs that Sandra presented earlier in the slides, in those three circles, and the larger hub meetings that we hold 2 to 3 times a year, we're really open to all sorts of types of participation from subnationals, from national governments. So the idea is that those are open, and if you're interested to engage, then that's an opportunity to be able to participate in that. And then for the other kind of more hub leadership and the co-chairing, this is more of the internal mechanisms for the CCAC to really think about the strategies, whereas the full hub meetings are really about best practice sharing, looking at implementation challenges, and thinking about how we can make connections between different technical experts, funding bodies, other partners.
Okay, thanks.
Soraya, you've also your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. And thanks, Sandra, for this very informative presentation. I have two, sorry, Soras Maun from UNEP, Pollution and Health Unit. I just have two questions, one related to governance and another one related to knowledge sharing. So on the governance aspect, I wanted to understand a little bit how the countries actually become co-lead. Do they is it on a voluntary basis, or what's the process to actually for a country to actually become a co-lead of one hub, and for how long are they nominated? That would be interesting to know. And on the knowledge sharing, Sandra, you mentioned communities of practice, which is a very good mechanism actually to share knowledge and information. I wanted to understand a little bit if you already had a vision around these communities of practice, or how will this differ from the solution center that you already have in CCAC? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Soraya, for the questions. And yes, the first point about the co-leads is that we have, this is on a voluntary basis. We have nobody has nominated any of the co-leads, and actually we're seeking additional co-leads for all of the hubs because we want to have a minimum of 2, but we would like to have more. You notice on the flags that the United States is already co-leading many of the hubs, and we're really thankful to the United States for helping launch these hubs and get them off the ground and get them running. But the idea is, of course, that the US and all of the other countries that have thankfully donated their time and expertise will rotate off of these co-leadership, and new countries will assume this role. We don't have a set time period, but what we have said is that we're hoping for a minimum of a year, and then ideally 2 years to help really have some continuity, and then they would rotate. But really would like to emphasize for any countries that are on the line who would like to take a co-leadership role, this helps because we can strengthen the dialogue between countries, and we can also then share the responsibility over a broader group of individuals. And regarding the communities of practice, what we really have in mind is that we want to bring all of the CCAC already has a very wide partnership. We have 73 countries and 73 non-state actors, or maybe 78 non-state actors. We have a lot of really important organizations and countries working on mitigating short-lived climate pollutants. And we have, to a certain extent, created networks of experts working together, but we want to really expand that and also give more people an opportunity to realize how they might participate. So when we say community of practice for the hub, what we're trying to do is really foster, to the best of our ability, a way for people to interact and to work together to advance concepts, priorities, proposals, and to really work together to scale up action in countries. I can give you an example in the household energy hub. The WHO is leading the HEPA, the Health and Energy Platform for Action, which is a critical mechanism working on household energy from a wide variety of perspectives. And the CCAC is participating in the HEPA as bringing the climate and air quality voice. We're bringing our mission to HEPA. HEPA is thinking about starting to work on a country basis, which is just absolutely perfect for us because we also want to work at the national level. So we're thinking about how we can work together in countries. The Clean Cooking Alliance is helping to coordinate this effort, and we're just thinking of how we can continue to broaden our scope so that all of the organizations who are working in countries on household energy are working together, and we can really scale up this work and in coordination and collaboration. So when I say community of practice, that's the spirit with which I'm expressing it. And I know that you at UNEP and you personally have a lot of experience leading communities of practice on air quality. And so I would really value your participation to help figure out if there's more that we could be doing. I'll be coordinating all of the sector hubs so that there's one person who has oversight, but each of the hubs will still have a specific person following the expertise and the content of the hub that, I wouldn't be able to do all of that, but I'm trying to help facilitate these mechanisms. Last but not least, you didn't ask this, but I just want to throw it in because you made me think of it. We don't have a health hub. We had a very active health initiative in the 2012 to now period, and we still want to play as strong a role and elevate health as much as we were in the past. But what we want to do is to have health much more integrated into our national planning hub and also into our sectoral hubs. So we're also thinking strategically about how we can really ensure that that happens, and would welcome your thoughts on that as well as we move forward.
Craig Jameson also has hand up. Craig.
Hello. Yes, I'm delighted to hear about this initiative. My name's Craig Jameson. I'm Director of Straw Innovations. We work in the Philippines on developing a suite of technologies to better manage rice straw, to avoid the straw burning, to reduce the methane emissions from rice production. The issue that I see from the private sector perspective is this. There's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of interest, there's in COP26, a lot of commitments to reduce methane emissions. Honestly, I'm waiting to see the money because this isn't going to change without investment, significant investment. We're required to really change the way we, in the case of rice production, produce rice. And that's not going to happen on its own. And there are certain market failures that are preventing that. So I'm delighted to see that there is finally, some money coming through that can help translate some of that sentiment and that interest into action. Would this funding, the $9 million, be something that consortia in this, including private sector partners, could apply for? What is the time frame? I have a lot of questions around that, but could you elaborate a bit more on the funding that's in the pipeline?
Well, just to say that I'm sorry we didn't give you a full agenda before we started, but you're going to be really excited to learn that we are going to go into detail of the funding structure just following this discussion. But I'm really thankful that you joined, and will say that we have been having a lot of conversations about how to engage the private sector in a more concrete way. And unfortunately, maybe James could speak a little bit more to the paddy rice in particular. My colleague who is leading on that is not on the line right now, but we would be happy to follow up with you afterwards about different ideas and aspects. We've been speaking with dairy producers through the dairy platform. There's a net zero dairy initiative underway through the dairy platform, and this is bringing together dairy producers to make commitments to reduce methane from dairy operations. And this kind of pathway towards large-scale implementation is something that we're thinking a lot about. James, I know that we've done work with with rice straw in the past, but maybe if you want to just jump in of like any immediate ideas we have for follow-up, and we're happy to follow up with you after the call as well.
Yeah, I think we can follow up separately, and perhaps it's easier to go to the next agenda item. I don't see any other hands up.
Okay, thank you.
So, Craig, if we don't, we should have your email, but please email us if you don't hear immediately from us. So, James, if you don't mind muting me, because I don't know, my buttons are all gone. I'm happy to advance the slides.
Sure. If you go to the next one, and I'm not sure if I mute you, Sandra, just sorry to share with everyone this technical thing, but if I mute
you don't need to mute me because there's no one awake in my
okay.
house.
Yeah, so on the funding process, so I want to give a quick overview of the funding process for everyone. This is being finalized at the moment. You can go to the next slide, Sandra. And hopefully it answers some of your questions. Of course, this is just the CCAC funding in the CCAC's trust fund, but we're also working through with our board members a new way of scaling up finance, including working really closely with all the multilateral development banks, including around how they're going to invest in methane mitigation, but then as well on how the CCAC could help advocate for more action from banks, create demand from developing countries, and all the different sort of aspects of mobilizing finance. There's also in the hubs, one of the roles in these communities that come together will be to also look for where they can collaborate together. And for many of our country partners that have bilateral aid programs, they're interested to fund the work. So there are like the options for what I'm going to discuss now for our projects funded from the CCAC, but also through the hubs, a lot of matchmaking that will happen for kind of bilateral aid grants, those kinds of development cooperation programs, partnerships, but also like larger scale financing, which is something that needs to be worked through and our CCAC board are currently considering. But for now, today, I'm going to really focus on the funding process. And for the partners that are in the CCAC, you would have seen the work plan and budget that was circulated last year for 2022. And Sandra's already mentioned that we had just over 9 million for projects this year. The CCAC board has set an ambition of raising at least $150 million US for the implementation of our 2030 strategy. So that's between now and 2030, but to spend the bulk of it in the first half of that period. So really looking to have much higher levels of funding for projects in 2023. Each of the hubs will be kind of guiding the relevant or the related sectoral engagement strategy. And this is, all of our partners will be really familiar with this process because we've been developing them over the last couple of years. And these are really aimed at transformative action in the sectors to address short-lived climate pollutants. I sent the link to all of the engagement strategies earlier in the chat. They're all on our website, so you can have a look at them. And those are really key because the hubs will be coming together, and especially in the leadership groups, to really think about what needs to happen, what are the urgent priorities that the CCAC should fund or that we need to work on financing at a greater scale, and doing that kind of more strategic thinking, whereas the hubs would full hubs, when they come together, are more like these communities of practice, looking at the overall picture and really exchanging. In terms of the process, so it is still not completely finalized. The board, our CCAC board, met in February this year and approved kind of an overall approach that was already signposted in the work plan and budget, and I'll go into a little bit of detail. But the aim is to have the full document finalized in April, and then it can be shared with everyone so you can follow along the process. But today we're just going to focus on the kind of main messages, and I think the main message here is that the call for proposals for the 9 million will be launched in June or July. There are two kind of processes that are being ironed out, but these are to address country needs and requests. And Sandra already mentioned the expression of interest process that we ran with all of the developing country partners in the CCAC. And that's really to identify, what is it that really needs to happen in a sector or around national planning or other kinds of SLCP mitigation needs. So we're turning those into service requests, we're calling them, or needs requests, and identifying those. And those will be actively shared by the Secretariat, by us, with all of the hubs. So this, going back to Premakura from IGES, your question about how are we going to link to actual action in the countries, this will be one of the ways, apart from like coming together between the hubs and considering it between, say, the waste and the planning. Also, we'll have this like list of what countries need and an overall assessment, which will inform our call for proposals and kind of a bottom-up approach for at least part of the funding. So this will be kind of both a knowledge source for the hubs to think strategically about where they're going to act, and also to advise countries directly to make it a bit more concrete to come together when you're thinking between like a sectoral hub, the planning hub, how you're going to work on the ground and make something really happen in a country. On the other side, this is a bit more similar to our former process for those that were familiar with it. We have funding also for implementing the engagement strategies. So this is more of the hub, and it's really to advise on, and we'll go into a little bit of detail. Maybe on the next slide, Sandra, please. So there are different ways in the new funding process for the hubs to engage. So one is in the formulation of our annual work plan and budget, because this is where at a high level, the envelopes, the buckets of funding for a different country action or for sectoral mitigation or for implementation of the engagement strategies, this is where that like funding envelope gets set. And that's also where the criteria will be set for that particular year. So all of the hubs will have an opportunity, say from July every year, the Secretary will start drafting this. and then it will be shared with all of the hubs so that they can provide, at least the hub leadership groups, so that they can provide inputs before it goes back to the board. And this is also one of the documents, even though the board does a lot of the decision making around funding, this overall work plan and budget for the CCAC is something to be approved by all partners. So this will be a really open and consultative process and approval process. Then there's also the calls for proposals themselves. So what we have proposing, and what's really important for the CCAC and under the new strategy, is that the hubs, coming and engaging in the hubs really can be useful, and there can be those strategy discussions to be able to determine what should the CCAC be prioritizing in terms of funding. You will have seen that in the engagement strategies, there's of course many things included, and of course there are probably priorities in each of the sectors or topics about what we should fund first, or perhaps how we should put it, how we might need to frame things or adapt them. But really the hubs will be looking and should be thinking about those engagement strategies, because what will happen, and I can go over this in a little bit in the next slide, but we will from the Secretariat pull out basically outcomes based on those engagement strategies, discuss them with all of the partners and hubs while preparing the call for proposals process, and check, what are the priorities, is this an accurate reflection of the outcomes in the sector or in the planning kind of work, and seek inputs from the hubs before then preparing a full call for proposals. So that's a process that will start very soon, since we're aiming for the launch in June or July. In terms of other ways that the hubs will be engaging, so encouraging co-creation, Sandra mentioned that earlier. So once call for proposals are issued, then hubs can come together and either work together to create proposals, form consortiums, or work on or share individual kind of ideas for proposals if they want to align a little bit how they're going to apply. So that's not really hard. There's no hard and fast way that needs to happen, and the hubs can determine that for themselves. Another thing, and this is related to the expression of interest process and the country needs and requests that I mentioned before, was really being able to provide advice on how those needs and requests are framed, because we will send out these questionnaires each year for an expression of interest from all the developing country partners, and then need to translate those into really like specific deliverables or needs or requests. So really to articulate and refine them with the country, but also with the advice of the hubs, especially in terms of what the technical framing needs to be. For anyone familiar with the NDC partnership and the CAIP process that they run, this is a really similar model, or very similar model. Next slide, Sandra. Thanks. So here, there's just an extract from the 2030 strategy, which is really guiding this, and it's really around this idea of what's transformative in terms of the 2030 strategy. And on the right-hand side, you can see some examples of what outputs from this funding for the implementation of engagement strategy could be. So you see like model or tailored regulations, and these come from the work plan and budget for the year, strategic work, technical studies, but also sectoral action plans and mitigation strategies, but even major research projects or other kinds of projects that I think could become something really big for the CCAC or open up a new area of work in the future. So these are really just examples, and I think what will really be important is that the hubs and the leadership groups really think through what are the next steps and the urgent priorities, or how they're going to build up something for the future once they start convening in the next couple of months, and considering what's in the engagement strategies already. Next slide, please. So I won't go into details, but you can see it on the screen. It's probably very small, but there's a process for this engagement strategy implementation. I already mentioned earlier, it starts with the outcomes being elaborated and consulted with all the hubs, and making sure that those inform what goes into the next call for proposals. So that's really the key point here. And I think the next slide, there's a little breakout box which just highlights that point. So yeah, that we will draw like these draft outcomes and consult them with our scientific advisory panel, the partners, and of course the hubs, to really make sure that what we're adding into the call for proposals is sufficiently targeted, but also in line with engagement strategies and the particular priorities that are being discussed in the hubs. So really this is focused on and this green diagram is really focused on the engagement strategy implementation or the transformative action. There's also the other process, which we haven't shown on the screen, but is about like this bottom-up country needs and requests, which we've sort of talked around a little bit. I think that's the last slide. So happy to have any questions, please raise your hand or write something in the chat.
I'm not asking a question. I was trying to let someone in. I finally found the boxes.
Okay, Prema Kumara, hi Jess, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks, James. Thanks for it's a little clear for me for my earlier question about the governance system with the hub and the funding. But let me clarify this current system that the proposals can be submitted only by the national governments or any other can, like I heard some of, we are implementers, so the implementing part can apply or the private sector members can apply or only national governments. Who can apply the proposals?
Sure, thanks for the question. But essentially the answer is there are two different processes within our new funding process, and one is driven by the countries. So that's the expression of interest that turns into these needs and requests, and then it goes out for a call for proposals for all implementers to be able to respond to, basically to deliver whatever that need or request is. The other way is that the transformative action in that process that I last showed, that is not a bottom-up country-driven process. That is about the hubs and the engagement strategies. So that is where organizations, consortiums can come together to make proposals in the context of the hubs to implement those engagement strategies. So there are basically two processes which will run for each round of funding for the CCAC. So there will be this detailed in the funding document once it gets finalized, and happy to answer more questions if that's not clear enough. Dr. Nia from Vietnam.
Okay, good afternoon from Vietnam. I'm here from the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. I just have a question related to the finance mobilization things beside the different process of financing. There's also important, it's about the mechanism to bring the donors or the funders together for the maybe the cooperation opportunity, because working in Vietnam, I know that it's working on towards our commitment in the COP26. It's a request or requires the huge of funding, and it's not based on purely on the projects. That would be have the kinds of investment project or investment with the big to moving the sectors, even on the value chain. So I just wonder, is there any mechanism is cross different sector hubs so that that will links the support or something is linked to for the countries to implementing its LCP strategies, and also important to also implementing the commitments from the COP26. So for instance, our minister is very willing to have beside the knowledge sharing. So we have going to have the up to date the experience, good practices, and the knowledge sharing from different member countries and also organization, but also to bring to discuss with a different potential or the investor, so that we can work together to do converting in, for instance, we're working with US company on the energy issue, for instance, or the moving the waste management into the worth or the energy sectors. So yeah, that is some of my comment. Also the question about the bringing mechanism on the discussion or the donor together to discuss with needed countries for not only its project, but also with the investment opportunity. Back to you, James.
Thanks, Nia. So for sure, we would be really happy to facilitate those kinds of interactions. They can be done through the hubs, or we're happy in the Secretariat to support that kind of matchmaking between countries who really want to scale up beyond the kinds of funding that the CCAC can offer, that perhaps still in the level of grants, that happen through bilateral development cooperation, in sort of $10 to $20 million range, and to make those and actively facilitate those connections, as well as with countries having interministerial workshops to make the case for action on short-lived climate pollutant mitigation or joint climate and clean air actions within the country. So you can engage ministries of finance to really get their buy-in and to make the economic case basically for the actions that need to be taken. So we're happy to facilitate that from the Secretariat, and also a great role, I think, for the hubs to facilitate between partners, also those that have technical expertise that can actually implement some of the activities in the countries. So I think the good news is that through doing this 2030 strategy and developing it, we've really got a lot of buy-in from our regular CCAC donors who are really interested not only to fund the trust fund, but also to fund SLCP mitigation activities in countries through bilateral partnerships. So we can make that connection. Then the other question is on the multilateral development banks. And I mentioned before that our board are currently thinking through, what is the best way to make that happen. It's going to be some sort of very complicated, multi-pronged approach of advocacy, but also thinking about, whether there's other kinds of facilities or project preparation facilities that need to be created. But all of that has a big question mark on it. But we hope to be able to really advance in the next 6 months on a much more solid approach to scaling up financing beyond the kind of CCAC funding and even beyond the bilateral grant-making development cooperation projects. Thanks, Hayden, also for the question in the chat. Hayden was asking, is there any idea already of the scale of funding that would be available for individual activities, and are there any minimum or maximum levels already established? So the answer is at the moment no. So really it's just the overall funding envelope that's been determined in the work plan and budget, and for the rest it's just a more flexible process overall. And we might provide some guidance on the level of the level to be expected for each kind of each proposal that comes in, especially for the implementation of the engagement strategies. Perhaps less so for the country needs and requests, since they'll be more targeted and defined, but probably at a smaller scale for those ones. But for the engagement strategy implementation and really the work in the sectors and the transformational work, the idea is to leave that open and have the hubs sort of discuss what is most appropriate and best to encourage their partners and implementers to put forward. Any other questions or further clarification needed? If not, then back to you, Sandra.
Thank you, James. And thank you everyone for the questions. So we did actually have planned a 15-minute break right now. So I'll just ask everyone if you would like to come back at what time? 25 after this hour. So just stretch your legs, and also you can feel. Maybe you might refresh my coffee, but I'm also happy to. We could have like a little coffee break. So if anyone wants to just unmute and have a chat, you can also turn on your camera, and anyone who wants to have a little chat can do so. And I'll be happy to chat with you. I'm just gonna heat my coffee first.
Yeah, that sounds good. And after the break, we'll go into a few other opportunities and things on the horizon, including the Global Methane Pledge. And if you have any other follow-up questions from what we've discussed earlier, then that can also be a chance to come back to those.
Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good break, and we will move to the last part of our meeting now, where we go into a bit more detail about the work in the hubs beyond the CCAC, our work to drive ambitious action, and then we'll have another question and answer, and then we'll conclude the meeting. So the major points that we want to raise your attention to are the Global Methane Pledge, the Kigali Amendment, our broader work on air quality and climate change, NDC updates, and these additional items. So maybe I'll start by going through each one of them, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into the Global Methane Pledge. So the Global Methane Pledge was launched at the COP, and this is a political commitment that I think more than 100 countries, approximately 111 countries, have signed on to work, and the commitment is really to work together to achieve a global reduction of methane by 30% by 2030. And so the question then becomes, once you have established this political commitment, how do you work together to actually achieve these reductions? And so the work that we want to do in the hubs is really to facilitate and support the Global Methane Pledge to the best that we can. And so the sectors that, of course, are going to be the key sectors that where this will focus on is going to be in the waste hub, the agriculture hub, and the fossil fuels hub. So there will be an emphasis in these hubs in thinking strategically about how countries can scale up mitigation of methane to achieve this broader global target. For the Kigali Amendment, in the efficient cooling hub, there will be a broader focus on helping to implement the agenda, implement the Kigali Amendment, and to have countries ratify the Kigali Amendment and move towards broader implementation. So not only the work at the national scale, but really the whole hub will be focused on this broader global ambitious agenda outlined in Kigali. We also want to emphasize, as I said earlier, our health work and our integrated air quality and climate change work is going to be a key focus of the National Planning Hub. And this is a place where we really want to continue to elevate the work that we've done through the Breathe Life campaign with WHO, UNEP, and the World Bank, and also to help scale up the stories that we can tell on the International Clean Air for Blue Skies Day every year on September 7th, to produce reports that will help drive this agenda for global air quality and integrated air quality and climate change mitigation, and to tell stories from countries about work that's underway to achieve the WHO air quality guidelines in particular. So that's work that the hubs will help support, as all of our solutions are really driving towards this integrated air quality and climate change overall. We are also going to be focusing together in the hubs on NDC updates. So we've done an analysis of the current NDCs, and we're in the process of matching that now with our expressions of interest. And we want to be thinking strategically about how we can support countries to continue to raise their ambition through the NDC process. Another area where we want to work on driving ambitious action is on approaching new approaches to leveraging finance. So thinking strategically about the mechanisms whereby we can scale up finance through other funding mechanisms like the GCF and the JEF, and to scale up mitigation actions by sector for each of the particular measures, and really working more closely with ministries of finance to help articulate the needs of the country. We also are having discussions in the board about whether we might be able to play a greater role in the Arctic in mitigating short-lived climate pollutants in the Arctic. So this is really an outward, the CCAC has always had this outward focus, and we're really going to try to harness the hubs to help achieve these political ambitions that we have within our reach through the CCAC partnership, as the countries who have made these commitments are also sitting around the table in the CCAC and in the hubs, and the hubs are really the place where we can test ideas and work to scale up mitigation together. I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about the Global Methane Pledge. There is a website you can go to where you can see more about the pledge, and wanted to call your attention to the pledge itself, which is here on the screen. Participants joining the pledge agree to take voluntary actions to contribute to a collective effort to reduce global methane emissions at least 30% from 2020 levels by 2030, which would eliminate over 0.2 degree warming by 2050. And so this is a real call to action, a real political call to action. And through our hub co-leads and our leadership group, we are going to be setting out more specific pathways and work plans towards achieving this global desired outcome. And again, this is about our common vision and about how we enhance collaboration among state and non-state actors. And also wanted to emphasize, it's not only the CCAC partners who can participate, but also all interested parties can participate in these hubs to help drive the agenda forward and make these connections as networked as possible. So as far as the next steps for the hubs, I've mentioned that we are holding calls between the co-leads and the secretariat to help establish a frame for each of the hubs. And each of the hub leaderships groups are beginning to meet in March. And then we will have full hub meetings beginning in April. And these will focus on country best practices, the latest science, overcoming barriers, and identifying priorities and next steps. These meetings will be intense moments of 3.5-hour meetings to really bring together the people in the sector and drive this agenda forward. These meetings will be 2 to 3 times a year and will be co-led by our country leaders. And we really are looking forward to developing detailed agendas that will be of great benefit to the people working in the sector to help scale up your work and create new opportunities. There's a call for the hubs to consider the priorities for the 2022, for the call for proposals, and also for the long term, thinking strategically about how we can achieve the milestones and the overall objectives identified in our engagement strategies. We also, as mentioned, are really aiming to create an environment where organizations and countries work together to co-create proposals. The CCAC has funding to fund new projects, and we also want to create a project pipeline to show increased demand. So it's not only what the CCAC can fund, but we can take concepts together to additional outside funding sources to really work to scale up the implementation on the ground. And we right now, and through many efforts over the last months, have been reaching out to partners and organizations to encourage you to join the hubs, and you are welcome to self-identify strengths and resources and share those with us so that we can best match your expertise with needs that we have identified in countries. And to join the hub is very easy. Please email the Secretariat with your contact details and the hub you're interested in joining. And we will include you, and you are also at any time welcome to write to us with any more specific questions that you have about the hub or ideas related. So with that, I would like to open up the floor for discussion and to consider what your next steps may be and what is of interest to you at this moment as we come close to concluding this meeting. Please raise your hand or turn on your video if you would like to ask a question.
Sandra, you're on mute.
Oh, excuse me. I received a note from my colleague that my video is off, but I think my video is working. So if it's not visible, I apologize. I think it's on from my side.
It's working for me. I can see Oksana from WMO has her hand up. Oksana.
If I may, Thank you very much for this a brilliant presentation, and I think that the idea that CCAC started looking broader at the opportunities to really create our activities on the ground, it's extremely important. We struggle to get the things going, as our colleagues mentioned, due to lack of resources, and there are a lot of brilliant ideas which we try to move on. In particular, from, let's say, scientific perspective, as I tried to explain you, we are working on the observational based approaches to identify and pinpoint the emissions. Sometimes they are not even known. So if we are talking about ambitious actions, we need to quantify what are the emissions we are trying to address. If we don't know what we are trying to do, it's very difficult actually then to declare the success, because you don't know how much emission reduction you actually cost if you never quantify how much you had in the first place. But that's not the point. I think the point is that you try to make an engagement with different financial mechanisms by raising awareness and creating momentum between the countries. It's extremely important, because I can share an experience from the World Meteorological Organization when we had a conversation with Green Climate Fund, and they say that, yeah, that's all brilliant, that's all beautiful, but if the countries do not request it, it's never going. And in many cases, the countries actually don't know what is possible and what is not possible. So using HUB to bring in momentum, bringing the science and the countries together and working together as a consortium on different financial mechanism, either the Green Climate Fund, which only talks to the countries. They don't talk to the, I don't know, any other requests. It's the countries who define the strategies, are talking to our global environmental facility, and even talking to NDC partnership. WMO is included in the NDC partnership, and I can see that the policies and the activities are completely disentangled. I mean, what you try to achieve with the One Community in Climate and Clean Air Coalition is completely different from what people are talking in NDC partnership, and it just doesn't cross together. So really congratulations. I think that Hubs will be super successful. We are really looking forward to get close engagement and provide support to the extent possible and make things finally possible on the ground. I mean, quantify emission, reduce them, and quantify the reduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oksana. And yes, we're very eager to work with WMO and to really connect all of these dots. And NDC partnership we have been in contact with them, and we are aiming to learn from their model. And so hopefully we can connect the dots as well through the NDC partnership to make things a little bit more streamlined, so that implementers and countries can more easily figure out how these dots can connect and how we leverage each other's work.
I can't see any other hands up, Sandra. In case anyone else wants to come in, do maybe just leave the floor open for a bit longer?
Yeah, please, people, if you have any questions or just like any reflections, we're very open to hearing. Okay, well, I think then we really would like to thank you. We have really an excellent participation today, and we're very thankful for the time that you contributed to join us for this introductory meeting to launch the hubs. If most likely you received an email from us, and that means that you're already connected. But if for some reason you're not, or you haven't specified all of the hubs that you would like to be participating in, please email us. For those who don't know me, I'm sorry, I didn't remember to add my email address to this presentation. I'll do that for the next one, but I'll be coordinating overall, so you can always use me as a focal point to get to the next place you'd like to get. If you want to email me directly, I'm Sandra Cavalieri, and I probably know many of you, but I've been with the coalition since 2012 and I'm happy to help connect you directly. Our Secretariat mailbox is also being checked all the time, so that is also a very nice place to go for general questions and support. James, do you have anything you'd like to, and also I would like to add that my colleague Seraphine, who's on the line, I don't know, Seraphine, if you are able to unmute, but Seraphine, to be clear, is leading the National Planning Hub, and I'm leading on the sectoral hubs together with my colleagues who are expert in the topic areas. So you may know my colleague Catalina Ecteberry, who works on the Agriculture Initiative, and my colleague Sandra Mazoniques, who works on the Waste Initiative, and Dan McDougall, who works on the Fossil Fuels, excuse me, I keep saying initiative, that's really bad, a Fossil Fuel Hub, Waste Hub, Agriculture Hub, and I am coordinating the work on the Household Energy Hub and the Heavy Duty Diesel Vehicles and Engines Hub, and then my colleague Nathan Borgford Parnell is leading on the Efficient Cooling Hub. So any last comments from my colleagues?
Nothing from me, Sandra, and thank you everyone for participating. And if you have questions, please feel free to come back to us. And just to recall, like on the funding process, we'll be sharing the full detailed version in April at some point. But yeah, looking forward to putting out the call for proposals in June, July, and working with you, all of you, through the hubs in the meantime.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.